Welcome to the Boss Audits and Investigations. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Scientology Chronicles. I just want to take a moment and thank all of you for the interest in this series, where we go through various government agencies, declassified documents, and investigate interviews obtained through FOIA requests. For those that may be interested, Seasons 1 and 2 of the Scientology Chronicles is now available as an audio podcast on several podcast platforms such as Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and many others. I want to also thank all of the new listeners that have found this content through whatever audio podcast platform you use. If you're interested in seeing the actual documents discussed in the audio versions, all the episodes can be found on my YouTube channel at the Boss Audits and Investigations. No matter what platform you listen to my content on, please take a moment and give it a like, a subscribe, a share, follow, or even leave a review. And as always, please leave me a comment with your feedback about the episode. Please also remember that a lot of these episodes do come with a trigger warning, and very sensitive topics are discussed in these documents. So please take care of yourselves. So let's jump right in. As I've continued to research, I have come across two additional documents, follow-up documents, if you will, that document the harassment and threats and fair gaming of John McMasters and Jack Horner. And we're going to go over those today. Both of these documents actually came from the U.S. Postal Service. Dear Mr. McHale, this confirms our telephone conversation of October 18th of 1971 concerning a letter we received from Reverend Terry Milner of the Church of Scientology of California, Los Angeles, concerning Mr. John McMaster. Mr. McMaster was the first clear in Scientology. His state of clear was announced by the Scientologists with much publicity, and he has toured much of the world as a public relations man for Scientology. Lie broke with Scientology and its founder, L. Ron Hubbard, in 1969. Mr. McMaster has advised us that he never believed that Scientology is or was a religion. He said he had an occasion appeared on television programs and at public gatherings wearing a black suit and a Roman collar because Mr. Hubbard asked him to. To him, Scientology is a secular thing, a science, and whereas he has eschewed its religious overtones, he still practices as an auditor. He still uses the e-meter, and he cures people, and he believes auditing cures people. I interviewed Mr. McMaster in Los Angeles in December of 1970 when we were preparing for the retrial of the e-meter seizure action in the District of Columbia. Mr. McMasters and other former greats of Scientology had indicated their willingness to testify for the government. For a number of reasons, it was decided that the government did not need these people as witnesses. While I was in Los Angeles on that trip, 3 former important Scientologists told me their lives had been threatened and that in one way or another, they had been placed in jeopardy by the Church of Scientology. We have previously given details on this to Mr. Hank Marsh of your office. All 3 claim that they had been robbed by Church of Scientology people. One was assaulted personally. A few weeks ago, I received a telephone call from Mr. McMasters, who now resides at Laguna Beach, California. He told me, among other things, that his life had been threatened again. We sent you a copy of my memo of that conversation. For your information, Mr. McMasters is a cherub looking individual, soft spoken, small of frame, and effeminate in his mannerisms and speech. Every time he has spoken to me, he has mentioned that the Scientology people have accused him of being a homosexual. And he has averred that they do this in an attempt to destroy his reputation. I suspect that Mr. McMasters is emotionally unstable. We are now in receipt of Reverend Milner's letter. And as you can see, Reverend Milner says bad things about Mr. McMasters. He calls him a homosexual. He suggests he is a drug user, suggests that in the past he has been of interest to the FBI, customs, and other regulatory bodies. All or none of these allegations may or may not be so, but they would be of little or no interest to the FDA, whether true or not. We do believe that the Milner letter tends to confirm Mr. McMaster's statements that the Scientology people are, quote unquote, out to get him. We are not impressed with Reverend Milner's representation that the intent of this letter was to help guide Mr. McMasters into competent professional hands. We have not answered or acknowledged Reverend Milner's letter, and we will not do so. We do not know whether the Milner letter violates any postal statutes, but we are referring it to you for whatever value it may have to yours. Bud T. Loftus, Acting Deputy Director, Office of Compliance, Bureau of Drugs. It's very curious to me how so many times we have seen all of these people come forward with a lot of information, come forward with a lot of details, come forward not only with details, but with similar facts. And these people all say the same things. Have you guys noticed how many times there will be one or two people that will say, "Oh, they won't be a good witness." I don't know why that would be, why someone would think that John McMasters wouldn't be a good witness. Um, I think he'd be a great witness. He was the first clear. He traveled the world promoting Scientology. So why they would think, or Bud Loftus thinks that John McMasters would not be a good witness. This letter he received from Reverend Milner, this particular letter, as he describes it, it's basically a dead agent packet, right, guys? John McMasters would have been the first person you would want as a witness in a case against Scientology. Now we're going to take a look at another document regarding Jack Horner. And again, Jack Horner was someone that's been mentioned in several other documents. Okay, so interview Jack Horner. And this is from February of 1971. Reference is made to your preliminary report of February 22nd, 1971, under the above case number, requesting assistance of the inspector in Los Angeles, California, in the interview of Mr. Jack Horner, Westgate, Los Angeles, California, concerning his experiences with the Scientology movement. It was indicated that Mr. Horner had left the movement and was now being harassed by Scientology officials. Mr. Horner presently resides in West Los Angeles, California, with offices on Westwood Boulevard in West Los Angeles, California. Mr. Horner was interviewed at his office on March 19th, 1971. He indicated that since 1968, when he left Scientology movement, he has been harassed in various ways, but has not received any threatening letters as such. He alleges that the Scientology movement has attempted to discredit him by mailing fake newsletters to members of the Association of the International Dianologists, a movement organized by Mr. Horner. His offices were broken into during October of 1970, and tapes containing his mailing list were stolen. During November 1970, members of the Dianologist group received fake newsletters designed to discredit Mr. Horner and his group. Further, on October 16th, 1970, Mr. Horner was assaulted as he returned to his home in the evening by an unknown person. He filed a crime report, and there was a police investigation. Several blows were struck before the person was chased off. The identity of the assailant is unknown, and Mr. Horner only assumes that it was related to the Scientology problem. Mr. Horner also alleges that during 1968, Mr. Horner also alleges that during 1968, advertisements were sent out to persons associated with Mr. Horner, indicating that he was going to give a lecture in a local theater. According to Mr. Horner, persons who showed up for the meeting and their names were and addresses were taken by Scientology officials. Mr. Horner could not give specific details on this alleged harassment. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pause very quickly right there. And if you guys remember, they did that same exact thing to John McMasters in Miami. Mr. Horner became associated with the Scientology movement in 1950 and worked closely with Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. He worked in the Elizabeth, New Jersey offices, the Los Angeles offices, and visited England to help train Scientology personnel. Mr. Horner was fired during 1952 and after about 6 months returned to work in the Phoenix, Arizona offices. He again visited England and taught specialized 6 weeks courses for Scientology personnel. In 1955, Mr. Horner worked in the Washington, D.C. offices and also made a working visit to South Africa. Mr. Horner indicated that he and L. Ron Hubbard experienced a good rapport until about 1968, when Hubbard became extreme in his control of the Scientology movement and became obsessed with his position of Commodore. World headquarters were in England until about 1968, when they were moved to Hubbard's Apollo flagship, where he assumed control of his quote unquote fleet of 8 vessels. A sea organization was formed, which Mr. Horner described as equivalent to the brown shirts, which enforced Scientology directives. Mr. Horner stated that he was still very much involved in the basic principles of Scientology, having organized his own Dianology movement along similar lines in about 1969. He has experience in operating the e-meter, which he described as a device for measuring thought response. He stated it was a simple machine, basically nothing more than a galvanometer. Although Mr. Horner cannot prove that the various harassment actions were caused by Scientology officials, he can give considerable information regarding the formative years of Scientology, as well as his personal association with L. Ron Hubbard and his operating experiences with the e-meter. He was to furnish copies of the Scientology newsletters critical of himself and his movement, but as of the date of this report, he has not done so. Please feel free to contact me at any time. I may be of further assistance. MP James, Postal Inspector. Another theme that we continue to see in ex-Scientologists, they want to keep using the auditing. They want to keep using the e-meter. They keep talking about how it's great. Like, if you take L. Ron Hubbard out of the mix, auditing and e-meters and Scientology and Dianetics is fabulous and that it works. Just take out L. Ron Hubbard and his megalomania, and it's amazing. I find it interesting. And there's still to this very day, if you believe some of the claims of some of the people that are in the ex-former Scientologist community, that independent Scientology exists, that there are people that still do practice Scientology, just minus the evil parts of it. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Please remember, no more kids in Scientology. Kids can't consent. And please remember to spread love and kindness wherever you go. And I will catch you on the next one.